Welcome back. Now, sport is big business. Billions of pounds are spent on TV deals, elite wages, sponsorship, tournaments and live events. Many of those live events, of course, aren't happening as they would right now because of COVID, of course. The Women's Six Nations Rugby tournament has been postponed and top-flight women's football isn't going ahead in the UK because it hasn't been labelled elite by the government, although the men's equivalent of both competitions will take place. So we thought it was a good time to look at how brands and business can help to level the playing field in sport and ask just how much progress has really been made despite the extraordinary achievements of some of our greatest women athletes.
It was everybody else that almost had to suffer because of what I did.
Vicky, I think you need a sports psychologist. And I was like, why? What's wrong with me?
I was a little bit scared when he first told us. I knew that there was a massive responsibility.
Undisputed lightweight champion of the world.
I didn't know about a breakdown, becoming a self-harmer, the being depressed. Had no idea what that meant.
If you tell me I can't do something, I will go out of my way to prove you wrong.
Well, that was a taste of a new documentary series on Sky called Driving Force, which is hosted by Judy Murray. The latest episode with Dame Kelly Holmes airs tonight on Sky Sports, and the series in full is on Sky Documentaries later this month. And joining me now, Judy Murray, who hosts and co-produced Driving Force, along with Lord Coe, Seb Coe, the former Olympic gold medal winner and now president of World Athletics, along with the director and producer of Driving Force, Rosemary Reid, who also founded Power of Women TV, the production company that makes the show. And I'm also joined by the global chief executive of the branding agency Landor & Fitch. That's Jane Geraghty. Welcome to you all. Rosemary, let me begin with you. You devised this series. What was your objective?
We were very honoured to work with some of the most successful female athletes of our era. And we wanted to hear their stories, but also what was the driving force behind these incredible women. Myself, we went on this incredible journey to, well, I certainly learned an awful lot about sport and the discriminations that are in sport, but it was something I wanted to hear the real story and the trials and tribulations that these women went through, and we certainly heard that.
It sounds, Rosemary, so you were quite surprised by what you heard.
Definitely. I was in many ways, whether it be from the lack of funding to the struggles to deal with the success that came with immediate success of becoming Olympians, because most of the women in our series are Olympians. It was quite shocking at times, and similar stories throughout. There was a lot of similarities in what the women had encountered throughout their career from very small, starting off very young. It was fascinating, and I don't believe that anyone could have got the honesty from these ladies that Judy did, because there was no journalist, no interviewer. It was just her. And they had this great respect for Judy, and it was very overwhelming at times and very emotional. And also I got great support from Sky when we approached Rob Webster in relation to getting the show on Sky. It was an immediate yes from Sky Sports, and they have been incredible, Joe Osborne, supporting the work that we're doing, and also the next season that we're doing, and the work that we're planning to do going forward. It's been overwhelming, really, how passionate they've been.
Good to hear. Well, let's bring Judy in. I mean, Judy, do you think that world-class sportswomen have it tougher than their male equivalents?
Yeah, definitely. It's a tougher journey. I think, because sport historically, of course, was a male domain, we've been late to the party, and we're still trying to catch up. And I think probably the last 15 years or so, we've made really great progress. Where we were before COVID hit was probably as good a place, as strong a place as women's sport had ever been. Of course, it's taken a bit of a step back, as have many things. But yeah, I think, as Rosemary said, creating the series and being able to tell the backstory of who and what inspired and helped these incredible sportswomen to achieve their great successes. But also for me, having been a female coach in a male-dominated world, and obviously having worked in sport for over 30 years, I've seen a lot of the challenges and the obstacles that exist for women that don't exist in men's sport. And so in being able to raise awareness of those creates talking points. And from the talking points, we hope that there will be action that will lead to changes for making the women's sporting world a better place for the next generation. But, if you don't make a noise, nobody hears you. And it's important that while things are relatively quiet in the female sporting world at the moment, Driving Force has really given it a platform and ensured that we keep a visibility out there, because, as you know, visibility is absolutely everything. If you can't see it, you can't be it.
Judy, what about the pay gap, the gender pay gap? I mean, obviously, tennis, which you know well, the pay gap has narrowed considerably. Do you ever see it being narrowed in other sports?
I think there are one or two sports where it's, it is really, are in a really good position. Tennis is one, and that really, we started 50 years ago when Billie Jean King and some of the top women players backed themselves to break away from the tennis tour and create a separate women's tour. And that is the reason why 50 years later, tennis is in such a good position, whether it's its profile on TV, whether it's men and women playing at the same major events like the Grand Slams, relatively equal prize money. It is equal at the Grand Slams, but it's still big, if not equal, on the men's and women's tours. That whether that's equal or not is really dependent on market forces. But tennis is in a great position for that because it started so long ago. And athletics is in a good position as well, as Seb will tell you, that, the relative 50-50 sport, the men can compete in the same events as the women. The prize money is equal. But there are very few sports that can say that. But in order for us really to fight for equal pay in other sports, we have to ensure that the performances are world class, and that means investing in participation, competition, and performance, obviously, because if the performances are world class and people want to watch them, you get bums on seat, you get eyes on screens, you get way more visibility, which obviously increases participation and a fan base, but it also brings brands in and sponsorship in because you can see it. But in order for television companies and sports journalists to get excited about sport, we have to invest in the performance first and foremost.
Yes, well, it's not just performance, of course, it's the way that sports are administered. And I wonder, Lord Coe, what professional sport is doing to improve the underrepresentation of women on a lot of the governing bodies.
Well, the blunt answer is probably not enough. And Judy made absolutely the right point, that you've got two quite big and, in a way, separate issues, but they come together. One is, equity on the field of play, and athletics, we actually celebrate that, as Judy said. We're one of the few sports where women can compete in everything that a man competes in, and we have equal prize money. My challenge when I became president of World Athletics was to actually do something about our governance structures and the number of women that were in positions of influence and seniority. And so we simply rewrote the Constitution, and in doing so have made it, frankly, constitutionally illegal for any of our governance structures not to be 50-50 by 2027. And that's going to be a lengthy journey. And we've also created a gender leadership task force, which will then create programs and platforms so that we also identify women of quality that can take those roles. We elected just a couple of years ago the first female vice president. But the answer to your immediate question is that many federations, many sporting organizations can and will have to do a lot better. And it's not a nice to have in any organization. This is not box ticking. A gender balanced organization will outperform an organization that isn't by some 15%. And when we're talking about margins in sport, we love the marginal analysis in sport. Well, just go figure what that means as a dead hand on your organization if you don't have that kind of diversity.
Seb, what about commercial opportunities? Do you think governing bodies are doing enough to attract brand owners to women's sport?
I think there is a growing awareness and certainly amongst the smarter brands, that there is that women's sport is something really to be invested in. Television has a really important role to play here as well. I mean, it's a very obvious thing to say, but where eyeballs and TV viewers are, broadcast rights follow. So you need to build the audiences, you need to promote the events, and then you need to make sure that there's sustainability. And if I may say so, I think Sky has been an exemplar in this area. You actually follow and you broadcast a lot of women's sport, and you are slowly but surely getting audiences to recognize that this is of real merit, and brands will come in off the back of that, and the smart brands are already doing that. We can always do more, but again, I'm very lucky in athletics because some of our biggest names are filling stadiums. You don't actually need men on some occasions to do that, and historically, even going back to the 1932 Olympics with Babe Didrikson, 1948, Fanny Blankers-Koen, 2012, the picture child was, of course, Jess Ennis. So, we don't sit in this debate about male or female. Women are filling our stadiums.
Absolutely. Well, Jane, you deal with a lot of brand owners. Do you think they could be doing more to enhance participation and interest in women's sport?
I do. And I think it's a great time for brands to be considering making a commitment to women's sport. What we're seeing with a lot of our clients is that things like purpose, social responsibility, diversity and inclusion, a commitment to a fairer world, these are real drivers of brand choice right now and becoming increasingly important. And on top of that, talking to our clients, we're also seeing the importance of showing a commitment to diversity and inclusion to your employees is becoming increasingly important. So from my perspective, I think it's such an exciting time for brands to be making a real commitment to women's sport as evidence of their purpose, their commitment to diversity and inclusion, and their commitment to being socially responsible. These are really important drivers of brand choice, and we're seeing that they're becoming ever more so, especially with younger consumers.
I mean, Jane, women's sport is actually comparatively cheap to sponsor compared with men's sport. A lot of brand owners missing an opportunity here, missing a trick.
I think so. I think I think there's such an opportunity here to be building a better future and telling fascinating stories about these amazing women who are succeeding in conditions that haven't been favourable to them in the past. And I also think that as brands are increasingly looking to show up on a community level and at the grassroots as evidence that they really are embracing what's needed now, caring capitalism, a real commitment from brands to creating a better future, I completely think that the opportunities now, it's a great time to be involved.
Judy, 8 out of the 10 best paid women sports people are all in the field of tennis. Is that just because tennis is a very well paid sport, or are there other factors there?
I think, as I said before, tennis is in such a great position because of this work that went on 50 years ago, the breakaway that ended up in the women's tour. And so now you see it where the visibility is great. As Seb said, with the women's sport stars in tennis, they attract huge audiences on their own. They don't need the men to be there. There aren't many sports that can say that. But if you look at over the last maybe 15 to 20 years, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Maria Sharapova, they are globally known not just as sports people because they are attached to huge global brands that they have attracted through their success, through their personalities, through their profile, because tennis has allowed them to create this huge profile because they're on television 10 months of the year. And that has been great for tennis because they're three of the best known, most well-paid women in sport, and they happen to be tennis players. And we will miss them when they've gone. So tennis has a job to create profile around those who are coming up in the same way and bring the big brands in. But as Jane said, this is not about just big brands being attached to those events and players, athletes who have visibility. This is about getting in at the grassroots and creating opportunities at grassroots level for women and girls to get involved in sport, not just playing it, but getting involved in administering it or officiating or coaching it. So we need a much bigger and stronger female workforce in order to not just attract girls and women into sport, but to retain them. Because I've always argued that women understand the world according to women and girls because they were once girls, and therefore they have more chance to create the right environment for women and girls to thrive.
Well, Seb, Judy just mentioned the grassroots level. Of course, a lot of grassroots sport is taxpayer funded, and yet the Telegraph did a really interesting investigation last year which revealed that a quarter of taxpayer funded sports organisations don't even meet existing targets on gender diversity. That's pretty shocking, isn't it?
Yes, it's not good. I think Judy makes a really important point here that, if you want true gender equality in sport, you have to start in the early years. And the grassroots element of this is absolutely vital. We've for far too long had these rather ridiculous discussions about, do we invest in grassroots or do we invest in elite sport? You can't have one without the other. You need that grassroots base. And if you actually start working in the early years and make sure that girls have an equal opportunity to perform and to compete and have the same dream as boys, then you will really see a shift in the dial. At the moment, we recognise, certainly over the pandemic months, that women's sport has been hit hard, and community sport, I think, unnecessarily. Sport knows how to socially isolate. It knows how to do a lot of these things, and it must be given the opportunity to do that. And it's really important that we don't, we focus on, we want elite sport, we want the Olympics, we want our Premier Leagues, we want the European Championships next year, but we must not take our eye off the central goal here of making sure that throughout these difficult months, young people are fit and healthy, and there's a particular emphasis on giving women, young girls, that opportunity to start that pathway. Judy's programme actually exemplifies the ambitions that many of those young, those competitors who went on to dominate the world, but some of the challenges they found in the early years, the acceptance that was there for male counterparts, that is often not there in that journey that young girls want to take through sport. And I think we can do a lot more there.
OK, well, Rosemary, when I was reading up on this series, one of the big disappointments for me was that you don't have anything on England's Women World Cup cricketers, which was one of the greatest sporting events I've ever been to.
That's for next season. We definitely, and also rugby. But I think that what Jane was saying about the brands coming in now and supporting female sport is so important. And I feel that for us, it was very difficult to get sponsorship. We have the top athletes in the world we were working with, and still, I think if it had been male athletes, we would have got a lot more interest on the sponsorship side. Sports Direct came in with us with Aston Martin, but it is proving very difficult. But we're working now with Jane and other companies to change that and try and bring more awareness how sponsoring female sport in different ways is it's a no-brainer, really. It really is.
OK, well, Seb, while we've got you, I just wonder how worried you are about the Tokyo Olympics and whether it's going to be cancelled again.
I don't think it'll be cancelled. It's going to be a challenge. We know that. It's pretty self-evident. And there will be adaptations. But look, of all the countries on the planet that really has the fortitude, the resilience and the street smarts to see this through, it is actually Japan. I wake up as a federation president pretty grateful that it's Japan that's dealing with this and not some other places that I can think of. So I'm sure we will be there. I think there will be big issues around crowds and socially distancing, the athletes. I mean, just think about the village. You've got 10,500 athletes, probably another 7,000 support staff in there, and they're all probably wanting to eat at roughly the same time. and that's just a sliver of the challenge. So look, I think for the athletes, it will be a very different experience. But what do we have? We have two key ingredients. We have the broadcasters, we have the athletes that want to be there. And look, we want passionate crowds in a stadium, but we also have to recognise that a very, very small percentage of people watching the games are watching it in the stadium. So I think that the games will take place, but I think they will look different.
Well, fingers crossed for that. And Judy, obviously another big sporting event on the horizon, the Australian Open. What have you made of some of these tennis players complaining about the quarantine they're being kept in?
Yeah, well, Jamie, my older son, is over there. He's one of the fortunate ones that was on a clear flight. So he's allowed out of his room from 6:30 in the morning till 11:30 to do his practicing, his training and get food. And then he's in the room from 11:30. But I think, he, like the vast majority of them, are very grateful to be there. They understand the challenges that Victoria, the state in which Melbourne is, has gone through over many, many months of very severe lockdown. And although it's tough and it's not ideal preparation going into a Grand Slam, it's better than no Grand Slam at all.
Absolutely. And everyone watching will no doubt be wanting to know how Andy is. Can you give us the latest?
Yeah, I think he's allowed out from tomorrow. I think he's gone through his quarantining and he's allowed out from tomorrow. So he'll get back into light training and wait and see whether it's possible or not for him to get out to Australia in time for the Open. Don't think anybody knows the answer to that yet.
All right, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Judy, thank you very much for joining us. Best of luck with the series. Rosemary, too, congratulations to you. It sounds fantastic. It's on Sky Documentaries, the whole series, before very long. Lorco, good to see you too. Appreciate you joining me. And Jane Geraghty, lastly, as well. Really good to see you too. Much appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.